What's up, everybody? I'm back with my really good friend here, Arturo. What's up, brother? Good to see you again, man.
Good to see you too, man. Thanks for having me back.
Been a little bit of a time since we've had you on. What's happened?
Gosh, well, was it September? Was that when we did the first recording?
Yeah, around August, September timeframe. Yep.
Oh man, so much has happened. I went on a pretty long hiking trip out in Mammoth Lakes. It was supposed to be a lot longer, but it got cut short because my girlfriend broke her ankle in a rock slide.
Yeah.
A boulder crushed it. So we ended up coming back early. She had to get flown out. And then we spent a little extra time in Mammoth Lakes waiting for her surgery. And then I think you and I were going to try to re-record after that, but taking care of her was taking up a lot of my time.
Yeah, it's priorities. For
Yep.
Sure.
Oh, yeah. And then I also got my black belt on October 6th in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Congrats, man.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a pretty big deal. I was real happy to get to that part of the journey. I don't want to say finish the journey, because I don't think it needs to be looked as something that has an endpoint, but there certainly is something that changes once you've gone through all the colored belts, and now you can kind of take the foot off the gas and look back on your practice.
Yeah, what's been your favorite part about this journey? It's taken you, about 8 years?
Yep.
About 8 years to earn your black belt. What parts stand out to you? Maybe not your favorite part, but what parts stand out to you?
Well, I think the biggest thing I like about jiu-jitsu is how my desire to be better in it has spilt over to everything in life. You know, for example, if in school you want to get better grades, you have to study and you have to make sacrifices, to stay later and learn these concepts. For me, it was some things in the realm of teaching and mathematics, because that's what my degree is in, which I got in May in my undergraduate. But in jiu-jitsu, if you want to perform better, then it begs a holistic overhaul of your life. You really have to get granular with your sleeping, your eating, your recovery, and then you got to look at your strength and conditioning. So the person that I was 8 years ago is not the person that I am today, and a lot of the parts that I feel have grown, have become better, are due largely in part to what the desire to be better at jiu-jitsu has done for me, because I have started to pay more attention to those things.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, when you're working with somebody else's body and you're trying not to get choked out, you'd rather do the choking than to get choked.
And along the way, you do these tournaments, and so every tournament, I won't use the term camp, because I feel like that's a term that's more for like people who do it professionally or who have sponsors. But the train up for tournaments means that you want to do your best, and you're going to be competing in a weight category. So at least for that month or couple months up to that tournament, you're taking your training more seriously. You're watching what you eat, and because you want to bring the lightest, strongest, and most skilled body to the day of competition. But then you start to realize, well, I don't need to do this just for competitions. It makes sense if I stay ready, then I never really have to get ready. So in that way specifically, if you go into competing for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, then you have this opportunity to transform yourself, just because the goal. Like what happens on the day of the tournament, if you win, you lose, whatever, that's great. That's an accomplishment in of itself. But the value in the train-up, its transformative properties, in my opinion, is the part that you really gain from.
Where do you think in your life you benefited more from your training in jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, that's a great question. That would have to be the sense of community.
Okay.
And I don't remember if we talked about this last time, but what being on the mats reminds me of is that fraternity that you have, that fraternal bond that you have in an infantry platoon. or maybe any platoon, but me being in the infantry, that's what I think. You know, when you join the military, everybody has to play from the same sheet of music, and it doesn't matter what your cultural identity is, what your religious beliefs are, your socioeconomic status, anything that has like an outward appearance doesn't matter when it comes down to your place in that platoon. What matters is how you do your job and how you're there, how you present yourself as a coworker or as a fellow soldier or teammate. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. On the mats in training, people come from all different walks of life. You know, you've got doctors, you've got lawyers, blue collar, white collar, investors, students, children, parents, moms, dads, soccer moms, soccer dads, whatever. Mm-hmm. But none of those things are going to make you better or worse at jiu-jitsu. What makes you better or worse at jiu-jitsu is how you apply yourself to the training. We all have to play from the same sheet of music. We have to study the concepts of leverage, timing, mechanics, conservation of energy. And the better you do those things, the better partner you become. Right? On the one hand, you learn jiu-jitsu, and that's a great skill to have into yourself. But being brand new, you don't have too much value as a training partner because you don't know much jiu-jitsu, so you can't show anything to anyone else. All you can really do is offer resistance for someone else to practice on. And maybe as a new student, that is your value. You're giving somebody the opportunity to pour knowledge into you. Mm-hmm. So there's an idea of mutual welfare and mutual benefit, which is very common in other martial arts. You know, like as you're teaching me, I'm teaching you about yourself, and then as I teach you, you also teach me about myself.
Right.
So to kind of bring this back to your original question, what's the best thing that I like about jiu-jitsu is that when I left the military, you know, there was a lot of learning or relearning that had to be done as far as integrating back into a civilian way of life, the social norms and the conventions that we engage in on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And part of the whole that's in your life is that there's no longer that sense of purpose or that overarching mission or goal, which is, you know, the success of your platoon. Mm-hmm. But finding something like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gives you that. It's the overarching idea. It's the larger concept of what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is and what that community is, that you get to move from one to the other. And so I find that to be a very comforting environment to make the transition from being a service member to being a civilian / veteran.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I remember getting out, you know, it took me a long time to get reintegrated. And I personally was numbing a lot of the stuff in my head and using a numbing approach to act like everything was okay. And I can definitely relate, like with jiu-jitsu and going back to our platoons, you're all equal on that mat. Right now, you might have different belt, but you're all human. You're all there to learn, right? Compete, learn, teach, grow, right? And I think that's really awesome, man. I'm glad that jiu-jitsu, you've worked really hard, man. I remember we were talking last year on, you know, hey, man, I might get my black belt this time around. And it didn't come, and we talked about that. You're like, well, what else do I have to learn? You know, and I think that's a great approach is it didn't happen on your time frame. Mm-hmm. And that's not how life works anyway. Right. You know? Yeah. So what did you do last year, towards the end of last year, right? You were thinking, hey, I might get it this month or something like that. And then you had to wait a few more months. What happened in your mindset from that point? Because it had to be low to a degree, right? Like, hey, I think I'm going to get a promotion. Son of a gun, I didn't get it.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people go through. And it's tough, right? Because before you get your black belt, you're a brown belt. And I had already been a brown belt at another gym that I left, and then when I moved to the new gym that I train under, which is at Precision out here in Citrus Heights under Chad Bingham, which is an Alliance affiliate. Mm-hmm. But unlike judo, there's no overarching federation that controls the criteria for promotion. So although I may have already been, let's just take an arbitrary number, let's just say 50% of the way through the development that might be required for to get to black belt from brown belt, when you go to a new school, there's almost like a lame duck period where, that instructor has to get to know you and vet what you do or don't know. Mm-hmm. So I'd already been a brown belt for about 3 years, maybe more. I want to say it was 2021 in March when I got my brown belt, and then I got my black belt in October, right? So March of 22, 23, 24. So over 3 years. I spent over 3 years as a brown belt, which is more time than I spent in any other belts. It might even be more time than I spent in my blue belt and my purple belt combined, which are the ranks before brown belt. But all that to say, I have a pretty good understanding of the different ways you could play jiu-jitsu and the different ways to play guard or do takedowns or, play a slow game or a more dynamic game with some of these more advanced guard systems that people like to play. And people they would be asking me, they would say, hey, even we thought you were going to get your black belt today, or, why haven't you got your black belt yet? And, that's the thing. You're not in charge of it. You don't get to make that decision. You just kind of put it in the hands of your instructor. And that's really up to them, whatever processes they go through to vet you. Mm-hmm. So if you're asking what I did differently, I don't think I did anything differently between the time when I thought I could possibly get promoted, which was around May of last year versus October of last year. So with those things, I think my approach as a brown belt was I already knew how to do, for example, the Kimura or a straight arm bar or a triangle. And now when you're going to classes and you're learning these techniques, you're not so much memorizing them like, okay, what do I got to do from steps 1, 2, 3, and 4 to get this arm bar properly? Mm-hmm. But now you're breaking down the mechanics in each step. Like how can I really set this up? How can I set in a cross collar choke, not just like a step 1, step 2, step 3, but maybe as a byproduct of my opponent trying to defend me from mount, right? It's like in chess, when you play the opening game, there's 3 objectives, which is to control the center, mobilize your pieces, and get your king to safety. And you can think about, okay, is this move going to do one of those 3 things? Or you can ask yourself, which move does the most of those things, which is why center pawn opening is the most common in chess, because it opens lines for the bishop and the queen. It gets you 2 moves closer to castling, and it directly occupies the center. Mm-hmm. So the same way, that's how you have to start thinking about your jiu-jitsu. It's like, if I know I've got to get my hand under the collar to put this cross-collar choke in, but I find a way to get my hand in that position at the same time while pinning my opponent and taking mount, well, then that movement already puts me closer to 2 objectives instead of just trying to do 1. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%.
Right. So
that's a great analogy to use and how to get yourself to where you need to be.
Right. So it's all positioning. So I would say like the main practice at brown belt now as going into black belt was I just kept looking at the things I already knew and saying, let's just pretend you don't know it. And let's take every class as if you're seeing it for the first time. You already know what the next move is going to be. But what I found when I felt like I was ready is when I was learning things and I was receiving things and I already knew what the next step was going to be. I was like, this is what is mechanically the optimal decision to do here. And there's nothing that would really like surprise me there. And interestingly enough, that's what it came down to. Or I noticed that same pattern as well in a lot of my mathematics classes, specifically like going into teaching, different concepts we talk about. I thought, okay, yeah, that makes sense. This is how I would break it down, and this is how I would explain things. So there's like a there's a cross section in that Venn diagram where like the pedagogy of mathematics and the pedagogy of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or even like how you play a chess game, they all intersect in that you want to do the things that are most efficient and the things that make the most sense.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. And like you said, like basically if you break down the steps 1, 2, and 3 to get to this cross collar choke, but what does it take to get to 1? And then what does it take to get to 2? Not just what are the steps, like you're saying that you already know the steps, but what does it take to get to that step, right? Like when you're measuring an ounce, or let's say a cup of water, right? You're filling it up from the bottom up to the full ounce or 8 ounces, whatever you want to measure to, but you're starting along that journey on how do you get to that initial stage and then the next stage and what's in between, right? And that's when you break down your Venn diagram. Okay, what pieces are connected here, here, and here, and how does it move?
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's really cool. So you did another thing that we talked about last time was you calculated, hey, where am I at and what's going on again? And that was something that was prevalent in your life, right? Hey, I had to break out the measuring stick. Where am I at? Okay, well, now I need to move to do what I want to do, right? And so this last year, you've made a couple new endeavors, right? In real estate, you flipped a property.
Yeah, we did that together. Yeah,
we did.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah,
man.
we did.
And then you bought another property in Indianapolis.
I did. Yeah,
dude, walk us through what your journey there, like in both aspects, and however you want to explain it.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll start the story from where we picked up, which was having lunch at Tank House. We had reconnected, and you were telling me about all these goals and your mentorship and things that you were trying to do with the broker that you were working with, and then going out on your own. And I was saying how I was interested in putting to work some of the funds that I had saved, and so we had a discussion about like what we were willing to put forth, or like what we could afford to invest. And so we hooked up with your partner John, and we found that property, and we knocked that out. We learned some lessons, and then after that, since we had made about a 5 to 10% profit on that. I don't remember the exact numbers, but basically I had gained everything back that I invested as well as a little bit extra. So I thought, okay, well, what's the next step? Where should I put this to work? And I'd always heard about, having Airbnbs and already having experience with the long-term rental. I thought, well, this would be something I would like to get into. So I searched for mentors, and I found one that basically taught me how to do everything from A to Z. And the first step is getting pre-approved. And getting pre-approved is very difficult because I'm not a W-2 employee at this time in my life. The last time I was a W-2 employee would have been back in 2019 when I was still doing executive protection. But in 2020, as you know, I went off to college.
Right.
And so I actually got a great income from my military pension and my vocational rehabilitation benefits that paid me out a basic allowance for housing to go to school in San Francisco State University. And because I owned a long-term rental that I also live in, which is a triplex, a lot of my cost of living was already taken care of. So instead of spending that money, what I did was I used that those funds to build out a van that I would then sleep in while I went to school in San Francisco, so that I didn't have to move out there. And then that allowed me to continue to accrue some more funds, which I later invested with you. But all that just to say, like, while my income was good, I'm able to take care of myself and set aside, it was not shown on a tax return.
It's not sufficient
Yeah.
for a lender.
So I can't get, and that's the hardest thing. You know, I thought, well, I want to do more of these investment properties, but because of the financial situation that I'm in as a veteran who's using his benefits, nobody is seeing that as stabilized income, even though I've got, you know, some other business experiences with running my own
It's not
gym.
like a verification of employment at all.
Right. No, it's not. Because like, it's like they can't guarantee that that income will come in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to link up with a bank all the way out in, I believe it's Ohio, that was able to look at my portfolio and basically do asset depletion or say, okay, well, you're good for this much. We're comfortable pre-approving you for this loan. And actually the first place I tried was Navy Federal, because supposedly they have a good program for second home purchase for veterans. But even they wouldn't give me the time of day because of the same thing.
Yep.
So I found these guys to do asset depletion or a portfolio loan where they said, okay, you've got this property, equity is about that much. Your investment portfolio is about this much. Okay, here you go. We get you the pre-approval. So that was step one. I knocked that out between October 22nd and November 6th, right around that time period.
Mm-hmm.
So now that you have the pre-approval, you're off to the races. And you can get on Zillow and you basically set up your buy box.
Right.
And you say, okay, where do I want to set up an Airbnb? Well, where do people want to go and where are they going year round? And so there's different websites you can use to find out. One of them is called AirDNA.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you look, and I'm just going to make up a situation here, but let's just say you look in Sacramento and you see, okay, the properties that do the best are 4-bedroom properties in Midtown during these particular seasons. So what you look for is you look for a city that has year-round traffic, or the slowest or either the least amount of slow season, which we're kind of in right now.
Mm-hmm.
So the first place I looked for was in Detroit because that, you know, actually does quite well for short-term rentals. And they have a city that is friendly to short-term investors. There's not too many hoops to jump through versus, you know, Nashville, Tennessee, where they've all but made it nearly impossible, except for residents there, to set up short-term rentals.
Mm-hmm.
Or Kansas City, that also has a lot of red tape. If you can get in there, it's a great place to invest.
Vegas has a lot of red tape around it too.
Yeah,
right?
Vegas is incredibly difficult to be profitable now.
Yep.
So the property that I looked at in Detroit, there was something kind of fishy about the realtor or the seller, and they were taking too long to get us into the property, and I really wanted to get something purchased and in service in that year for 2024 because there's a short-term rental tax benefit that decreases each year.
So you got the fiscal year of 2024.
I wanted to get that was the goal. Get in
Great
for
job.
24.
Great
Yeah,
job.
and put in. Thank you. Yeah, because that tax break goes down from 80% to 60%. I think by 2025 or 2026, it's going to be all but phased out. So you can no longer benefit as much from things like cost segregation or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up moving to Indianapolis for my searches, and my buy box was something of a minimum 4 bedrooms, 2-bath, yard. And then what you do is you look at the top performers in that area and you say, okay, what is their design? What amenities are they doing? And how are they doing on AirDNA? And what do I have to do to meet and beat that standard?
Mm-hmm.
Then you can get a projection of what your revenue is going to be like. So I got with another realtor and we did the walkthrough. We went through the whole like making an offer as far as like earnest money and however many days to close, inspection period, going back and forth. It was a pretty tough process because after the purchase was finalized, of course you find things and it's like, would I have done things differently? Maybe, maybe not. There was certainly some more expenses that I hadn't accounted for and things that got missed in the inspection. A lot of things got caught and we were able to negotiate some things to get repaired. But looking back on it, if my advice would be to not have the seller fix things, but instead get bids, get a credit, and if possible, get out there. If time is not of the essence, get out there, take your time, really make a list of everything that needs to be done. Because some things, go ahead.
No, keep going.
Yeah, because some things we're just not done to standard, you know.
That's one thing that I take into consideration here in real estate is when I'm negotiating a request for repair for a buyer, or saying, hey, done by a licensed contractor vetted by buyer, or done by this licensed contractor who bid this inspection. Because making the repairs doesn't mean it has to be that person unless it's in writing and the seller agrees, right? So anybody, Uncle Tom, Uncle Joe, right, Uncle Phil, whoever, who used to be a handyman back in the day, can come by and fix that leak in the sink. And when you move in, it's actually worse.
Yes.
Right. And so what we do on our negotiations for our buy side is, hey, this is going to be done. We're requesting this be done. And by a licensed contractor, we prefer this one. Right. Or give us a credit so we can repair it ourselves when we close. Right. And most sellers typically we don't want to make repairs. And it does benefit, in my opinion. I know how other people disagree with this or not. But I think it's better for the buyer to get them done themselves, because then that contractor has liability to them, not the seller who made the repairs, right? And it's harder to chase them down after close of escrow rather than, hey, we close escrow, now let's get it done, get our contractors in there, get it done.
Yeah, and you know, that's kind of the cost of admission when it comes to an investment property. I think if you're just trying to buy a home for yourself, then you can afford to be more scrupulous and take your time. But, you know, at the end of the day, like, I have faith in this market and I have faith in this property. So you have to keep your eyes on the prize. Mm-hmm. You have to say, you know what, even if I am getting a little bit screwed on this repair, I'm still, all it's going to do is affect the payback period. Right? That's all it's going to do. Because once it's done, once you're generating revenue, and that revenue is exceeding your operating expenses, and you've already set aside allocations for profit, set aside allocations for taxes, reinvestments, cash reserves, and profit. Mm-hmm. You know, once you get to that profit stage, then you can say, okay, well now I'm recovering my investment. And then once your investment's recovered, well, now you've created an asset. You have a golden goose. You have something that's just going to lay eggs.
Right.
So that's what the eyes on the prize is going to be. If it means I got to, take a few less trips, if it means, oh, great, this year I only get to go to New York and Bahamas, maybe not Japan, or maybe I do get to go to Japan. You say, oh, maybe I got to give one of those up. Big deal. So what?
Right. It's just a delay. Like you mentioned, it's just a delay.
It's a delay.
If it's an investment, right, you're not exactly heartbroken over 2 weeks or 30 days or even 60 days on getting that return value, because the long-term gain, the delayed gratification is there.
Yep, exactly. It's the long view that you really have to play for. And that was actually part of this experience that was really liberating as well, because I have, spent a lot of time saving, and I let go of a huge amount of what I had saved up to do this, because I didn't really finance anything except for the home loan, mm-hmm. right? Which the mortgage is, the mortgage and the insurance is already cuts into a huge chunk of what you have to make, or it makes up a large amount of what you have to make to be profitable.
Totally.
Plus cleaners and supplying things, and then people to take care of your hot tub and all that. Mm-hmm. But once you get past that, then it gets kind of juicy, and you're like, okay, well, that's where I want to be.
Right. Right. The juice becomes worth the squeeze at the end of the day.
Yeah.
If you're looking at that orange that's sitting on the tree right now, and you notice it's still a little yellow, a little hard, you're not gonna pluck it, right? You're not gonna pull it off and try to eat it.
It's gonna be sour.
You're gonna wait. Yeah. You're gonna wait for that thing to turn really bright orange,
right?
Really nice orange. Oh, cool. It's less firm. now I can take a bite.
Well, yeah, and I think that's what we're trying to say is like all investments are going to take a certain amount of time to mature and bear fruit. But so that's what the liberating part of that whole experience was like being able to let go of what I held on for so tightly and see that the quality of my life has not changed. Because things were put in order, like on my end, like on a daily and monthly basis, you know, I'm not going for want to make ends meet. Mm-hmm. It just means that the numbers in my accounts have gone down for a while.
Right. You still have it.
Yeah.
Still have it. It's in an asset parked somewhere else.
Right.
It's not visually seeing dollar sign, but you have that. If God forbid something happened and you're like, hey, I need to cash out, you could. Right.
And But that, like, so there might be a penalty for like repaying the loan early or whatever. But yes, and then that brings a good point too, is before going into this, you know, any kind of business venture, you go with enough plan that it should succeed. But part of a plan should always be a smart exit strategy as well. Mm-hmm. You know, can I get out of this comfortably? And I think I can. You know, would there be some loss? Yes, there would be some loss. But the way things are going right now, it's looking like I made the right decision to do this. So we closed. We went into contract around November 6th, around November 8th or 9th. And we were going for a 30-day close, so we wanted to close around December 6th. And part of trying to meet that timeline, because one of the first people I had to hire was a designer. Mm-hmm. And I also needed to get a floor plan. And so trying to get somebody into the home to get a floor plan or, you know, use a Matterport app or whatever, like a lot of these investors who you meet, or real estate realtors, a lot of these realtors who you meet through like Bigger Pockets or searching them in the city, there's no pre-existing relationship there. So they're just going to do enough. They're not really going to help you out and get you access or get somebody in there to get photos for you because, you know, that's not what they're there for.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is. You'd think they would try to do a better job, but I know other people who have invested in Indianapolis, and I've told them straight up, hey, you know, this person really wasn't as scrupulous as I needed them to be. So I would not recommend using that. If they said, hey, I contacted so-and-so, I would say, yeah, don't use them. But anyway, I had to hire a designer because you want to get that design, and then they're going to come back to you with a shopping list and the design for your room, and you got to order all that stuff and get it set up and then placed into service by the end of 2024. Right. So we didn't end up closing until December 16th, and we did it by notary, like where the seller signed the papers and then I signed the papers here in Sacramento. And then December 18th, I flew out to Indianapolis, and I got there, you know, middle of the night, period of darkness, 18 to 19 of December. It was like 1 a.m. when you get into the house, and there's no curtains up. There's like a couple mattresses that were in boxes that had already been delivered a little bit early on the steps. You know, you're thinking, oh, I just got to get there quick because I don't want things getting stolen off the porch.
Totally. And
then so from December 16th to January 17th, over the holiday season, I was in this 4-bedroom, 3-bath house with a detached garage, just hustling every single day, unpackaging boxes, meeting contractors, getting people to fix things, updating the electrical, replacing the front door, installing the smart tech, getting the shopping list from my designer, paying for things, maxing out my credit card, trying to pay it off or paying it off, but not having those payments go through in time so that I could order more. So having to go to my debit card and move funds around. You make this whole mess of your finances, you know, which when I had my first gym, I learned a lot, or when I had my first business, which is a gym, I already learned how to keep my books clean.
Right.
So there's a lot of unmuddling that I'm still trying to do from that period, because one of the things I'm trying to do is to set up a LLC to keep those things separate. You know, before I had an S corp when I had my gym, and now I've got I'm going to be in the process of setting up a LLC so that I can, you know, get the business bank account, get the business credit card, and keep everything nice and separate, and maybe even move my long-term rentals into that, and, you know, again, like bring down my own taxable income and be able to keep things separate from who I am as a private citizen, versus my investments, which can actually operate separately under a business entity and keep me tax free.
We can put them all into trust later on, keep it protected, get all that. Yeah.
So, long story short, I did a bunch of crazy things in Indianapolis. I think the craziest thing was like trying to build a fence in the middle of winter. And like now the ground's frozen. I probably got it in the last few days. I had to like rent the auger from Home Depot, and I already had like a little fence building side project / business during the pandemic. But man, this was the most difficult fence I ever had to build because the ground was so hard, getting the auger to work, you know. It's just me, so like the thing would jump and you try and keep it and make sure that you don't get an injury on your leg that like takes you out, because then I can't work on the property. Now then you'd have to deal with being in the hospital and getting people to work on your property. So what's that come down to is more a loss of funds and a loss of time.
Jeez.
But it was so cold. Once I got the frame up, I could only work out there for like 10 to 30 minutes at a time before I would have to come back in and warm my fingers up. Because it was just so cold trying to put the planks up in the shade. But, you know, got it up in a couple days, and then this huge snowstorm came in. Couldn't even do it the way I like to do it, which is concrete, so I just did it with foam. Yeah, which actually ended up setting pretty nice. But I did that knowing, okay, I might have to redo this when the weather gets warmer.
Right.
And that's just one of the things that got
Thank God we're in California, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, like that's the thing. All my neighbors in front of me, they're like, oh, welcome to Indianapolis. This isn't like California. So I'm like, yeah, I you know, that joke was funny the first time.
Right. It's cold.
You know, yeah, I get it. It's cold. Like I built the fence in Indianapolis. I think I can say I've done the hardest thing you can do in an Indianapolis winter. I should get some hoser credit for that. That's what they call themselves out there. Hosers or
hosers. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, dealing with the snow, I had to take the truck in that they gave me at the airport and exchange it out because I just had like this 2-wheel drive thing and it was like sliding all over the place.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I have had like some driver's training when I did executive protection, so I knew how to drive in the snow with underperforming vehicles.
Right.
But that doesn't make it necessarily safe or a good idea. So as soon as I could, I switched out with a full-size truck. The people were cool. They helped me switch it out. And then I just got back to working on the house. But I left on the 17th still having some things that needed to get taken care of remotely. And so I got a good network out there. My contractor, he's expensive, but he does good work, and I trust him. I think that's what it came down to is, you know, like I mentioned earlier, setting up the smart tech. So he has his code. He can go in and out of the house whenever I activate his code and work on things at a distance. He just put the string lights up for me so I can get the pictures retaken. Mm-hmm. You know, it's one thing to have your listing show off the photos, but you have to get professional photography. And, you know, you're trying to meet the standard of the buy box that you set, which for me is like 4 to 5 bedroom homes, 2 to 3 baths, and all with like hot tubs and hardscape backyards with string lights. Well, my backyard is not yet hardscaped, and I didn't have the string lights up, but I still needed to get those photos out. Mm-hmm. So once the ground gets warm enough for me to have the ground excavated and the rocks put in for the hardscaping and everything can be finalized, then I can go back out. I can have somebody go back out and take better photos.
Right. Are you going to do decomposite granite, or are you just going to put rocks?
Limestone number 8 and limestone number 9, just basically like some real small, fine river rock.
Yep.
Yeah, and right now there's just like some grass, and thankfully on the photos it's kind of covered all with snow, but without the snow covering it, it's just kind of muddy and dead, dry grass, and you want to avoid that. So you got to get the ground excavated and have the tart put down, the weed cut, and the rock put in. But then what you have to take into account for is the mosquitoes that are going to be coming in when it rains, and now you have like this water, so you got to plant like lavender in the back to keep the mosquitoes away. There's like a lot of things that you have to take into account, but the idea of hardscaping is that you reduce your landscaping costs. Right?
100%.
And then the front of the house needs some painting too, again, for curb appeal. So we paid for the professional photos to get us out the door, to highlight the amenities that we want to put in front of the customer, in front of guests, in front of renters, which is, you know, the ensuite, the king beds, the bunk room, all the games, the human-sized chess set in the backyard, the hot tub, the picnic area, the Adirondack chairs, the fire pit, and all these little details and things that show people this isn't just another home that you're putting on Airbnb. These are things that show future renters that you care and you are going to be a hospitable
I love
host.
that.
Right, because your ratings is everything. Your cleaning and your ratings is the lifeblood of Airbnb. So you're taking a big risk. Now that you've stepped into this market, now you have to perform. It's not just set it and forget it. It's not exactly a golden goose or a goose that lays golden eggs without work. You have to stay on top of your systems. You have to set the expectations out front with your guests, like, hey, this is what I will provide. Your pricing has to be smart enough that you're not attracting the wrong kind of people who are going to trash your house or try and hold you hostage to a review. Because, 4 out of 5 stars doesn't mean what you think it means. I would say, like, if you can get 5 stars on Airbnb, anything between a 4 and 5, that's your true rating. So whatever rating you have, subtract 4 from it and take that decimal value, and that's your actual rating. In other words, if you have a 4.68 rating, really your rating is like 68%. Like if you search on Airbnb and you look on those listings, you're not going to see any house below 4.89 for the recommended, for guest favorites. So, there's a lot of, while they're there, you gotta do little things. Like this last guest I had, I noticed that the weather was coming for snow, and knowing that they traveled there, they're in your home, they're not going to want to be like shoveling salt on the sidewalks. So you let them know, hey, I see that we're going to be getting some freezing rain overnight. I'm going to have my assistant go by and throw some salt out if that does happen, just to make sure, you guys don't slip and stuff like that. And let me know if there's anything I can do for you. Otherwise, you try and leave them alone and not be so invasive in their time.
Yeah.
There's a delicate balance that needs to be seen, that like, I'm here for you, but I'm also not up your butt about like what you're doing in my home.
I'm not going to be imposing on you.
Right.
I'm offering my service, my gratitude for you staying here. I want to make sure this is an enjoyable experience, and I'm not your parent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Like, none of us want to be talked down to. We all have, enough means, enough money to book a vacation rental. So
right.
You want to be treated with that kind of respect. But that's the thing, is people don't realize that. They're like, oh, well, I can get a hotel cheaper. Yeah, you can, but you're not going to get the same kind of amenities, and that's the point.
When we travel, we love staying at Airbnbs. Now we'll stay at nice hotels. I like staying at nice hotels on occasion. Like, just depends on what we're doing.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy a nice Airbnb. And like you said, you mentioned something like on your rating and stuff. We stayed at an Airbnb in Nashville for New Year's, not this last year, the year before. And the bed we slept on caved in the middle. And I know we weren't the first ones that happened to. And hopefully we were the last, probably not. But the people we were with, right, who ordered the Airbnb, we let them know, hey, this happened. And it was like every night, dude, the freaking bed folded in the middle. And we're like sleeping like this, you know what I mean? And so we left them a horrible review. And I'm more of a 5-star review kind of guy. Like, I know people put in a lot of hard work and energy. This bed is crap. Why are you leaving it there? You know what I mean?
What was the communication like when you brought it to
I
attention?
was not responsible for any of that. It was her cousin's mom, her aunt, right, was responsible for everything, and she let them know, hey, this wasn't here, this isn't this. We actually had to pay for a cleaner to come into the to clean out the washing machine, because there was what appeared to be mold, right, or scum and grime.
Yeah,
and there was a cleaning crew cleaning out one of the neighboring properties, and I'm like, hey, you guys come check this out. Can you guys clean it? Like, because I didn't want to wash my clothes in it. Yeah, we were there like 5-6 days, and I needed to do some laundry. I'm like, luckily that cleaner was right there. But these are experiences, right? And when you're paying for something where you're not in a hotel, you want to have those amenities. You want to have a good time. I get Airbnbs because I like the privacy. I like feeling in a home. I like seeing what kind of amenities they have. I want to go to the rooftop and look out on the city or whatever it is.
Cook your meals. Enjoy the hot tub without kids.
Right.
Somebody else's kids.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I can understand. And just hearing you, like I know you personally, and I want to commend on your detailed analysis of everything you do, from the flip property, from the Airbnb, from jiu-jitsu, from school, from taking your sabbatical. I looked at your packing list for Mammoth Lakes, right?
Oh,
And then going back after you brought Anna back and all that stuff, you and your buddy dipped out like the next day or 2 days after to go retrieve the pack. Yeah. And you're like, hey, here's our detail, here's our route, here's what we're doing, right? Yeah. And like, it's important that you understand the process and the journey, man. I commend you for that. I'm more like kind of go, you know what I mean? And with seeing how you do things, like it does help motivate me on different levels. When we went on the hike at Lake Berryessa, we had an amazing conversation.
Oh yeah.
Like, and we were hustling up that thing. You had 40 pounds on, I had 40 pounds on.
Yep.
Right.
That was the train up.
Yep. I had my Go Ruck on. Yeah. You had your pack on, and we're going up. And man, how about those chicken and waffles after?
Oh yeah, that was amazing. Yeah, the chicken and waffles in, I think it's called Little Puta Creek Cafe.
Little Puta Creek Cafe.
Yeah.
But that hike was awesome. We got to, get to know each other a little bit more. And we saw the guy, how old was he? He was like 80?
He was in his
70s or 80s?
70s or 80s, yeah.
And he was on top looking out on Lake Berryessa with a friend from his church or whatever it was, just sitting on the bench. And she was all jazzed. And this guy... He's over twice our age. Yeah. And he had done Mammoth Lakes and he'd done all these things. And he was in great shape, Yeah,
he was. I think he also did Loch Levin.
Yeah.
And he was telling us, I can't remember. I feel like he did, I don't know if he did Everest, but he was certainly an accomplished mountaineer from what I get.
I don't remember if he did Everest or not. But
yeah, he did some major peak that people in that.
That dude would run circles around me. Yeah. But... I just love your detailed analysis approach on that. It's really, really awesome to see as a friend.
Thanks, man. Right? Yeah, I mean, I think, I just have come to enjoy spreadsheets and training plans and, projections, and nothing feels better than when you make a timeline either on a microscopic level for a vacation or a long-term level for a business plan, and you see how close you got it, or like what margin of error, what range you're within. And then it becomes a skill. You learn how to make those projections and those predictions better. And then you learn to take calculated risks with measured steps to get you from where you are to where you want to be. And where I want to be is just able to do the things that I love to do, which is jiu-jitsu, hang out with my friends, go on trips, enjoy time with my girlfriend, and that's where I am,
Yeah.
But life continues, as we age, we're going to enter a period where we're going to have more expenses in terms of like our health care. So like another investment that people don't talk about is the investment of your own body, right? You're going to save yourself a lot of pain in the future, depending how you take care of yourself now. But those investments that you have now, you might say, oh, I'm fine doing now with what I need, but understand there's going to be a time later on when you're going to need more. And you can't really rely, I just think it's not wise to put all your eggs in one basket, so you shouldn't count on Social Security to be there. Some people have said it'll be insolvent as early as, 2030 or 2040.
Well, when they have 150-year-olds on it,
Yeah. Well, and that's just it. Like, who do you want in charge of your physical well-being? Do you want to put that in the hands of somebody else? Or do you want to put that in your hands? And so that's why it's important to gain these skills. One of the things we talked about, one of my goals, because I have no heirs of my own, or I have no next of kin, no children of my own, but I do have my nephews. One of my goals is to get good enough at this investing thing, at setting up properties, that I can teach them how to do that, or help them get their first investments signed up when the time comes. So, as a 40-year-old man with a long-term rental in Sacramento and a short-term rental in Indianapolis, then my goal now is to just continue refining this skill. If it continues to be successful, then learn how to keep up with the time so that I could pass that skill on.
Right.
Like they say, it's the whole like teaching someone how to fish versus giving them a fish. If I leave some money behind for my nephews, great, but they're already going to be taken care of from whatever my parents or their parents choose to leave them. Mm-hmm. Even more great is if they can say, wow, my uncle already taught me how to build fences. I taught them when they were like 10 years old or so. We replaced the fence in their backyard Christmas of 2020 or 2019. And then maybe in the future they'll say, well, now my uncle taught me how to set up investment properties.
Right.
Just like my dad taught me. Like these are the things that have real value, because if everything is taken away from you, the only way you can get back to a point of abundance of your own accord is with your own skills. Right.
That's beautiful.
Thanks,
That's
man.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really about what you can produce. We often measure where we're at in life with our net worth, right? Mm-hmm. Or our health. But really you just have to think, well, if all this was taken away, what would I do to get back there? Or what can I do?
Yeah. I talk to agents a lot, help coach them up, especially when they're inquisitive and they're hungry. I love talking to them about it because not every agent's the same. Not every jiu-jitsu practitioner is the same. Not every artist is the same, right? And they're not supposed to be. I'm not saying people are supposed to be the same at all. Actually, I think entirely different. We're supposed to have differing opinions, different approaches, different thought process, different experiences, and explanation of those experiences differently, right? That's what makes the world beautiful to me, is having all the opposition, all the different approaches, all the different angles of thought, right? But we're talking about, you're only as good as your next deal, really. And how are you going to get that? And you're paid in congruence with the value you bring. So what value do you bring? We just had a conversation this morning about it. We're doing script practice and role play. And, you're at the table with the seller. They've interviewed a couple other agents and they ask you, okay, well, thanks. We've gone over everything. Why should we sign with you? And going over that script. Well, if they're asking you at that part, you're behind the eight ball a little bit. Right. But let's find out where they're coming from that. If they're asking why they should sign with you, they're one of two things. One, you didn't bring up all the value you have or answer the questions that they had, which is the most important part, or they just need confirmation on why they should hire you. Mm-hmm. Two ways to look at that. And the question goes back to, okay, well, if we've gone this, and this, my question would be, well, what would make you sign with me? Right? What did I do different? For you to ask me that question, there's got to be something in your head for you to bring that up and disarm them. I don't got to show you. If we've already had that conversation about what I do, what I bring to the table, blah, 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 how we'll do this, either you weren't paying attention or you just want confirmation, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that's beautiful. Another thing too, you mentioned about our life and our health. It's one thing that I put a precedence on over the last couple of years, getting better and better and just incrementally better.
Yeah.
So I haven't drank or smoked all year, right?
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Last year I went 108 days. Right? I did my 75 hard and then some on that. Mm-hmm. And then I started drinking beers again. I've removed basically all of liquor. Occasionally I'll have a shot here and there, or I would. And this year I'm okay. So other than deployment, 108 days is my record without substance, some form of substance, whether it's alcohol, marijuana, or whatever. Okay, well, let's beat that. So my birthday is 130 days from January 1st. Okay, that's a good target, right? Let's move that. Let's move that way. And this time I'm watching. Last time I was so encompassed by the 75 hard of checking off the box. I didn't stop and smell the roses. I didn't think about my sleep pattern, my recovery pattern, my thought process, the way I was waking up, the way I was sleeping, the way I was feeling, the way I was communicating. And this time I'm okay, well, my only goal is to get to this number. On my fitness stuff, I have another journey I'm on. And man, it's beautiful, right? And so just yesterday, even putting down nicotine, like, because I've been vaping for I used to smoke cigarettes a lot, quit for like 4 or 5 years. One weekend in Jacksonville, Florida, with the fights, with the UFC fights for the first ones with people back, meeting a new friend and his brother, and they were vaping the whole weekend. I was like, oh, I can vape with you guys. I'm good.
Yeah.
I came back and I never put it down.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I started doing Zins too and all this stuff. So I've been on this thing, and I was like, all right, by March 31st, I'm quitting. Mm-hmm. Right? Put it out there. All right. By the end of the first quarter in 2025, I'm quitting vaping. And then we'll work on Zins. And then yesterday, like in January, a couple times, it came in my head, should I throw it away now? Should I do it? And I wasn't there. I wasn't quite there. And then yesterday was my first full day. So the day before that, I got out of the gym. I put on a podcast. And this guy was talking about how he had like double pneumonia in his lungs. And he had smoked for like 57 years. Older cat, right? And his doctor was like, hey, you smoke? And he's like, yeah. He's like, you need to stop. And he was like, okay, I'm done. Right there in the hospital with him, as he's got double pneumonia, smoked 57 years, was like, all right, I'm done. And I just left the gym. I didn't pick up my vape or anything. I was like, dude, I'm going to text Allie. I'm going to quit right now. And so I got home. I was like, hey, I got something to tell you when I get home. Came home, and I was like, I still have some left, and I threw it away. And we're on day 2 now.
It's a powerful, powerful reason, powerful choice, right? You have to have something, a why.
You have to.
You have to have a why. I think that is the true demarcating line when it comes to addiction, either to substances, nicotine, food, or any bad habit. Like, you can measure recovery in terms of days or months or years, or say, I want to get to this date. But from my own experience, I would say that recovery isn't complete until your appreciation of the reward is greater than your desire to not do it. So what that means is like, I can say, I want to stop drinking, and I want to make it to 30 days, 60 days, 6 months, year, 18 months.
Arbitrary.
And then start counting in 1, 2,
Yeah.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years and collect a chip. And you can hit each of those markers and say, good job on myself. I haven't drank, and I have accomplished not drinking. But for me, because I don't drink either.
Right.
And I don't even think about it. For me, what it comes down to is like, I just appreciate, I enjoy being able to use my body, get up in the morning, do jujitsu, and be good at it. Mm-hmm. So much more than even the thought of drinking. So it's one thing to like refrain. It's one thing to run from a habit. It's another thing to like chase a goal. It's good to have these separate.
The running away from pain or running towards pleasure, right? Yeah. That's why people move.
Yeah.
And most people run away from pain. What I found first what I found is that I'm an addict, right? And I'm not going to AA or NA or anything like that. And if I have friends that are going to there and are making it along their journey and doing their thing, and God bless them, like they're having a great time. For me, that's not really the deciding factor, just for me personally. I found I'm an addict, and I should have known that when I was doing cocaine. I should have known that I smoked from the time I was like 12, 13.
Sure.
Right? I had my first cigarette when I was like 10 years old, right? And I smoked consistently from like 13, 14 through the Army, and then eventually quit. But like, I looked at my parents, and I said, okay, what does my dad do? What does my mom do? What does my adopted dad do? Oh, snap. Like, what do I want to be like? And if we're having our relationship, and I'm talking to you about my growth and all this stuff, and we're on a hike or fishing, whatever we do next, right, I want to come and be like, hey, by the way, I found this out about myself. What a concept, huh? And so I'm finding along this journey without the alcohol and weed, man, I like this version a lot better. I like this version.
Yeah.
Right?
No, that makes sense.
Like, I like this version.
I was going to say, like, we should be careful about saying, like, it's a difference from, what did you say, like, running from pain or running to pleasure and hiding from pain. Mm-hmm. Well, I think, like, sometimes that's the same thing when it comes to addiction.
Could be.
But I think because I guess it's something that you talked about earlier when you said, like, delayed gratification. Mm-hmm. It's about appreciating the capability that you have when you abstain from these things, more so than just the clean time from it. Now, running towards pleasure and hiding from pain, you know, those things, those get into more like complex issues, like what is the pain that you're running from that's leading to that behavior? Or why is it? What is the behavior or the trouble inside you that is leading you to run towards this pleasure? But it kind of goes back to that whole idea of being in a platoon or part of a training community, is that, you know, this choice affects the person that I bring to the organization. You know,
100%.
So it's kind of a group accountability thing. You know, like when you have something that's bigger than yourself and you can see the rewards from day to day as that practice gets stronger, or, you know, that organization does better, mm-hmm. then it becomes more powerful than that temporary reward that tempts you.
100%.
So
I totally agree with that. And I see, like, the pain and pleasure thing. Like, that's
right.
A real easy way to put it. But you're right. It goes down to your the individual and what they're feeling, what they're processing. What are their tics?
Sure.
What's making them do this? And for me, like, I probably had I'll just say I had a worthiness value that I didn't have. Like, personally, I was like, well, I'm not good enough. I don't deserve this, or not loved, or all those, you know, lies I would tell myself. And it was beautiful to see that. You're like, oh, well, if I'm really that bad of a person, then I wouldn't have a relationship like this, or with you, or with Gavin, or with my fiance, or with my business partners, or with my gym culture, right? Or wherever else. If I was really that bad of a person, then those people wouldn't be associated with me, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so removing that thought, let me just look at this objective being. Like, how loved am I really? Like, you came to my baptism.
Yeah.
I had 50 people there at my baptism. Like, what does that say, right? Yeah. It's not what I'm saying in here. It's what is the world saying to me, right? Yeah. And I think a lot of people should look at that. Like, when they're thinking they're down and depressed, nobody loves me or whatever. And we're in winter right now, as this season, right? And people deal with seasonal depression. They're not getting enough vitamin D, all that stuff, right? And so, like, that can trigger some responses, some mental responses. I actually have a client just put in a contract that was like, hey, I need a lot of sunlight, especially in the winter, because I get real bad seasonal depression, right? And so if you're going through that stuff, I think it's important to realize, like, hey, write down like 10 people that love you real quick and just call them. they'll walk you through, you know, you're okay. Mm-hmm. But for me personally, I think that's what I was running from.
Man, that's powerful. I like that idea of having kind of a break glass in case of emergency list of, like, people you can call to pull you out of those moods, or, you know, counting your blessings, or
gratitude, man.
Yeah. Or at the end of the day, you know, at the end of the day is when the best days are the ones where it's like, at the end of the day, I can look back and say, like, all these good things happened, or I accomplished these things, you know, like, sometimes if you just waste a day and you, like, didn't do anything, like, that's good. It's good to have those days every now and then. But my head rests easiest when I know I got the things done that I meant to get done, or at least put the effort towards them and didn't run from them. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you've got your short-term rental now. You've had your long-term rental. You got your black belt. Mm-hmm. What's your next goal?
Right. Okay. Well, the next goal is to go further with this short-term rental thing.
Okay.
And I've got access to another one in Kissimmee near Disney World, which is not exactly my property, but I'm pretty close to the owners of it. And from what I can tell, it's underperforming. They're in a sticky situation with the property manager. I looked at their listing. It's been listed for 6 years, but it's got no ratings, which is a good thing and a bad thing. It's a bad thing because, those ratings push the listing up to the front page. It's a good thing because they can only get positive ratings from here on out. So my immediate goal is to really just nail down the processes of what's making Indianapolis successful, because we've already got a green month projected for March.
Right.
So, in less than 2 calendar months, the business is working as it should. We're on our way to recovering our investment. And Indianapolis is not for beginners. It's Kissimmee is not for beginners in terms of investing in real estate or short-term rentals. So my goal is to get in touch with the property managers out there and just kind of let them know, this doesn't work. We're going to fix this. You're going to bring me on as co-host. I'm going to set up the communications and the automated messages and all these bookings we have for the rest of the year. I'm going to be reaching out to these people and saying, want to make sure you get a 5-star experience. Please leave us a review in accordance. I'm going to go out there and do the overhaul, get our own cleaners on staff, get our own contractors, get our own amenities that are not shared through the property manager / HOA, because it's in kind of this gated community that caters to people who want to go to see Disney World.
Yeah.
And so just like we talked about that buy box, you got to look at what all the comparables are doing. Well, out there in Disney World, you want to make money, you got to have a themed house. You got to have like
I think you got to go Disney themed.
Yeah,
no?
you got to go. You got to have like a goofy room, or you got to do something real crazy and go like Avengers theme.
Right.
You got to have like a game room that just looks amazing. And right now, admittedly, the property doesn't have that. That's why it's just kind of been puttering along. And the listing agent is showing, or rather the Airbnb listing lists all the amenities such as the water park and the clubhouse first before it talks specifically about the amenities in this home, which means that the listing agent or the booking people, the property manager, are using this 8-bedroom, 5-bathroom house with a pool as an amenity to their vacation rental services rather than putting the house first and showing the park and the clubhouse as amenities that the guests will have accessible. And that's a big difference.
Right.
That's why I say, like, I'm going to be the co-host and I'm going to handle all the information, the pictures, the design, anything that needs to be done. And if I present that pro forma to the owner and say, look, this is what's going to cost to get you up to the level of the other properties, if we really want to start getting what your investment can get you. Or we could say, you know what, we can even take a more aggressive route, which actually may not be risky. It might be more of a risk to try and get that property to catch up than to just liquidate it and then pay the capital gains and then take those funds to set up Airbnbs in thriving economies such as like Indianapolis, Texas, Kansas City, Detroit, doing what I did, but in more fertile ground.
Right.
So that would be a goal, is to like continue refining this skill. I guess even sooner than that, I've got a pretty exciting trip coming up. I'm going to be sailing in the Bahamas next week.
Nice.
Yeah, with a friend for his 50th birthday and my girlfriend. We're just going to go out there and, sail around. And I don't know if I'm going to have to hire a co-host or not, but I think I'm going to have internet access, so I should still be able to handle like my business dealings during that time. After that, we're also planning a trip to Japan. We haven't quite decided on a date yet, but that's only because I'm looking at the cash reserves for the business and seeing if I'm going to have to like inject any more funds into it to pay for some of these upgrades that I want to have happen sooner than later. But that's on the cards. And really like the deadline for me to have all the fun that I can have is mid-August, because at that point, then I start my credential and master's program at UC Davis to, complete that final step to become a math educator. And I'll be honest with you, man, like at this point, I'm doing that mainly because I don't want to leave my military benefits on the table unused. So for now, like the credential and the master's program is for me to use the remainder of my GI Bill, which expires in 2027. And the byproduct of that is having the opportunity to get in front of students and have like a teaching career. But teaching doesn't pay well. And that kind of goes back to like what I was talking about in taking care of yourself. Not relying, if maybe like teaching is my passion, I enjoy being a part of a community and exchanging ideas with young minds and coaching wrestling or jiu-jitsu or whatever, that may not pay the bills or give me what I need to live a comfortable life. So the goal is to get all these things set up, maximize Indianapolis, do an overhaul in Kissimmee, figure out what I can market myself as to be a co-host or help people like fix their short-term rentals, and then do maybe even what I can to convert my long-term rental to short-term rentals for the units as if my tenants ever move out. So I would say instead of like going towards the next shiny thing, what I'm trying to do now is leverage the skills that I have to maximize the growth opportunity for the assets that I already have in my possession, right? Because you might get a better ROI just by upgrading your property than trying to get a whole new property, which is going to have a much larger cost or expenses associated with it. So yeah, I guess in short, to answer your question, would be travel, school, and just continuing to refine my business and business systems.
I love it, man. I look forward to having you on again. Thank you again for your time, brother.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude, it's awesome, man. I love watching you grow. I'm excited to see this next year, brother.
Thank you.
Yep.
Awesome, man.
All right.